What's good? It's your boy back at it. All right, this is going to be the first part of a three-part series of a pretty good story. Um, Happened back in '04 when Vinnie Gorgeous became the acting boss of the of the Banana crime family. Um, the guy in my crew was a May guy at the time. His father, who was my mentor, was a captain. Um, there's a lot of guys in the crew that were, made at the time, and people don't realize it. And I'm gonna try to break it down for you because a lot of these guys, they're inducted or they're around or whatever it is, and they never seen nothing. They never been about nothing. I know for a fact that there's associates that know more than captains made guys that are under him. He don't even want guys that are made under him knowing certain things. He don't even bring them around him unless they got a report or there's something to do. Usually they're never around their captain, and the guys that are around their captain know certain things. And I hear a guy come on, and me, I'm not looking to beef with nobody. I'm looking to make this channel successful where people could get something out of it. I don't say it's for the kids. I don't say I'm a mentor. I want this channel to be successful for people that are where I was and they can pull out. Now, the hatred that goes on for me, it only stems from one place, and that just, they put a battery in people's backs. They put a little bug in somebody's ear, and it grows. I've watched it. I watched it when I walked away from the life it happened. And then 4 years later, when I decided to do this, the same person started that up again. So when you hear somebody talk about a guy like Blaze Carrazzo, right? Blaze Carrazzo is a nice old man, right? But he doesn't know what's going on in the Gambino family. Such as when he approached somebody and asked them, how did this happen? How are you able to pull this off? He was able to pull it off because the Gambino family didn't want anything to do with them. You see, I know. But I don't try not to down talk people in this business because I want to see everybody survive. I want to see everybody do good at this. If there's a way to make money, let them make money with it. But don't try to trash talk what I was involved in because you weren't there. You weren't on my streets. I know where you were. I know you checked in. I know your backbone. I know your history. But I don't put it out there. But I will today in a little bit. And then you got the guy who wants to be all friendly. Why I said I wasn't going to attack you in the background pulling the strings. So now he's just as worse as you. So I could come at all of you. He's a fake. Your websites are fake. Your stories are fake. You're telling stories. The little Joey told you that happened. That Big John told you. You were never there. You didn't know anything about it. And I love the story about when you're meeting the hierarchy for the first time. So at least when you get made, you meet them, they'll know you already. I was breaking bread with these guys. I didn't have to go meet them. When you got to go meet the hierarchy because they don't know who you are, you're a nobody. And you were a nobody to them because you moved to a different borough because you were scared of the borough that you came from because they had dirt on you. And then you come out, and both times when I said, why? In my interview, I mentioned Blaze Carrazzo. And then you mentioned Blaze again. Well, listen, we nicknamed Blaze Mister, my crew. I told you my crew gave out the most nicknames probably in organized crime history. They were just a funny thing that we used to do. Here's a guy that would be waiting in front of the club for us to open it to play cards. And he would call the captain that I was with. And now, he was actually under him at the time, a May guy. And I'm just an associate. I'm not even an associate. And he's telling the kid, circle the block until he leaves. Okay, that's how we treat the guy that you're using for your credibility as a May guy. Okay, and I was just an associate watching a May guy who comes from a reputable family get abused like that. Okay? Just to let you know that when you're getting this false information from a guy who talks like he's a gangster because he talks because he's slow. No, he checked in. Gone. Believe me. So you don't got to check my credibility. And then when they talk about the bosses, man, come on. I got to sit down and explain this to you. John himself called Joe Watts his boss's man. McIntosh, Colombo family. I mean, this is before me. These guys give you false information. And now the other one, who was a pretty smart guy, actually a very smart guy, he jumped on the wrong bandwagon because they got it all wrong. And I told you, anybody made 2013, 2015, 2016. They're glorified associates. They have no idea what's going on. They never been around bosses and real skippers and powerful guys. Just follow their storyline. Got on a plane every week, came, collect your Shylock money, got back on a plane, went back on a land. Yeah, nobody would ever do that and waste $1,000 every week that you gotta, because you can't plan a trip 2 months in advance without paying $1,000 for a round trip to get back to another state that you were hiding out in on the lam. Nobody was even looking for you. So when you people listen to these guys tell stories, they're clueless about their own Cosa Nostra because they're told to it from a guy that still thinks it's the way. Every time Cosa Nostra gets restructured, the rules change. People keep saying the rules are broken. No. They changed, right? Before, you never could get straightened out if you're a drug dealer. Everybody in Cosa Nostra was, there's bosses that were big heroin dealers. Vinnie Gorgeous was a heroin dealer. Known fact. Boss. There was a rule. If you got caught, not that you were a drug dealer, if you got caught selling drugs, you got shelved for 5 years, meaning you couldn't be made for 5 years. Then, if you're a made guy, skipper, boss, and you're involved in drugs, you usually got underlings that handle that so you don't get knocked down or shelved. So I hate when these guys come on that I tried to support in the beginning. I did. Before they even were on channels together, and I was working separately with both of them behind closed doors, which one of them will probably deny. That was like one of the first guys he called, but he couldn't even get his own channel off the ground. And I was willing to go on, risk my reputation going on a channel where a guy only got 3 subscribers. I don't want this beef. But you can't tell me. All right? I'm not saying I'm the all in all in the encyclopedia, but I watched it. Matter of fact, this part 1 of the story was we were in the Bronx because people were making introductions for other made guys that were getting made. Guy in my crew and a couple of guys in the Bronx. And why we were in Harlem, because they owned a bar there, which was a lesbian bar. That was a Gambino joint. And they were opening up a restaurant a block and a half away from RAO's. And we ended up at RAO's for drinks. That's how this whole story even started. Now, what am I doing there? This is an introduction night. These are friends. They're going to be introduced to each other as friends now. Even though they know each other, you got to be introduced as a friend now, officially. I was there. Blaze Carrazzo did it right in front of me when Mike Agnello gets made. The place on Cross Street Boulevard, we were all sitting outside eating. There was no, can you get up and walk away? One, I would never be disrespected like that by a made guy in my crew that knows me because they know my ability of being a man. They would never ask me to walk away. Would they whisper something? That's a different story. Did they go off because we were sitting on the outside of the restaurant? My friend who was a captain, he went off because he was introduced. Mikey just got made, and he was introducing Mikey to the Carrazzo side crew and my crew that I was hanging out with. So he would go off to the side every time somebody came. We were told to meet there that night. Why was I told to be meet? Why was I there? I shouldn't have been there, but I could tell you everything that went on because I was there. Why should I be at a meeting after the restaurant closes? They leave the outside open. We're drinking outside. The inside restaurant's closed for people to be introduced to Mikey now as a friend. And I can tell you plenty more. As I told you before, I was on the outside of ceremonies. Okay? There's rules for everything. They change every day. And there's exceptions for everyone. Now for me, to break it down for you, it's very easy. You got somebody telling you about the life that was hearing about it from a guy that truly knew about the life when it was something. And then the newest stuff, he was hearing about from somebody that was a real deal guy. Lil Joey. Not him, Lil Joey. A real deal guy. Because Junior probably would have gave him a beating, but Lil Joey, he wasn't giving a beating to. So that's his guy, his friend that he knew. And this is his childhood friend who I knew before it even happened. Wasn't even sticking up for him because he thought he was wacky. Why would you have to go on the lam if the boss of the family's son-in-law is your best friend? You would never have to go anywhere. All these other guys were acting. Acting this, acting boss, acting underboss, because there's only one boss still to that family, and he's in jail. And you're supposedly best friends, which you were when you were a kid, with the boss's son-in-law. And not once does he come up, sticking up for you when you're on the lam. Because he found out that you were wacky and wanted you chased. That's why he didn't stick up for you. That's why that name never comes up, sticking up for you. But then you want to come out and try to attack me, and you did it in a couple other videos, and I let it go. But I'm not going to let it go anymore because you don't have the vocabulary to compete with me. Nor does your smart friend. Because he can only listen to what you tell him, and you're giving him all the wrong information about Cosa Nostra. And everybody in Cosa Nostra laugh about it. Because they're saying, let them bury themselves with all the fake news, all these fake websites, because they're talking about Cosa Nostra from 1920. You can't come after me. You can say whatever you want. I'm not bringing up that man. I don't know them. I was one of your first phone calls when you wanted to open up your own show. Okay? You were wacky. The Gambinos knew it. They wanted nothing to do with you. And the only guy that you keep mentioning is a guy that the Gambinos don't even tell or re-up on what's going on in that life anymore. Leave me out of your mouth because you're clueless about Cosa Nostra. You were a glorified associate, and at that, nobody in the Gambino family didn't even care. They did zero respect for you in Ozone Park and Howard Beach. Zero. Before you decide to become a good guy. Zero respect for you. And you know nothing about Cosa Nostra. Zero. Okay? Because guys are bred since they're kids about Cosa Nostra. You weren't. You were a hanger-on that switched boroughs when you came home. Because you were embarrassed. Because the guys that you grew up with knew. The guys that were hanging out with you before you went and knew what you did when you were away. Embarrassment you were. So, with that, 2004, we go down. One of my friends is already a May guy. He's on his way to being a captain. We already know it. He's already going to be acting captain for his father. Another one of my two friends just went in. And we went up to the Bronx to meet the Bronx crew. They were in the newspaper recently. I talked about actually how we gave one of them a nickname that night, and they used it in the newspaper. They had a lesbian bar almost around the corner from RAO's. It was in Harlem. And Patsy's, where I wanted to go eat, but best pizza you can ever try, regular slice, uptown. And they opened this beautiful, beautiful restaurant, failed, but miserably. They figured they would get whoever couldn't get into RAO's would go to this restaurant. So the Gambinos opened up a restaurant there. Absolutely beautiful. Had all state-of-the-art equipment, beautiful seating. If you ever, and of course no one's ever been to RAO's, but if you ever get to go there, you'll see it's old seating, tight. Actually, this night was one of the first nights I ever seen them, like in the movies, take a table and put it down by the bar because there was 3 very important people were having a meeting there that night. And they didn't even say it was a meeting. The one person actually said, it's the weekend. We're all out having a good time. Whatever it was said, I'm going to get into the story. So, we thought it was a meeting. And then when this guy, Vinnie Gorgeous, says to the guy in my crew who's a May guy, he could have said, you can't talk to me, I'm a boss, or you can't, but he didn't. He turned around and said, it's the weekend, guys, we're going to enjoy it, this, that, and walked away, and that just turned everything upside down. And wind up being with, so we're in the Bronx, we start out in the Bronx, pick up a few guys, they get a carload of guys, we got a carload of guys, we shoot down to Harlem. We're going to check out the restaurant that they're building, and then we're going to go by, out of respect, drop a few dollars in the place, just out of saying, good luck with the joint, which I'm sure they had a while. We never been there before, but it was a lesbian joint. Really, it must have been, I don't know if it's still there, but it was packed out the door. They must have been making a ton of money there. And then we're going to go to RAO's, maybe grab an appetizer, have some drinks. And at this point, I meet the cousin of the guy who owns RAO's. Now, I don't know it's his cousin at this time. So, introductions are made. Guys were introduced as friends right in front of me. Right on First Avenue. Right in front of me. Guys were introduced as friends inside the closed restaurant that wasn't ready to be opened yet, that was being opened soon. Right in front of me. As friends. My friends introduced as friends. I could go as far as a lot of things I don't like to say because I don't like to jam up people out there today that are active in the life on where guys were making jokes and showing me the finger, showing me, walking out, showing me where they were pricked. Like, you guys don't even, you listen to these guys that talk about the 1920s Cosa Nostra. And something they weren't involved in, just things that they heard of. But they need to come on here and tell you something because they got no more content. They're done. These guys are all done. That's why I'm being attacked by everybody. And I got beef with nobody. But I'll always stand up for myself. No one's going to abuse me. They didn't abuse me in the streets. No one's going to abuse me out of the streets. And I'm not going anywhere because my content's just beginning. And everybody can use my content. I'm not going to sit here and tell you and toy around with you and say, oh, it's for this one, it's for that one. My content are for people that are out there in the life, in the streets, committing crimes, that they can listen to me and get this message. I was there, I did it, and it didn't work. And I made it out. How are you expecting to make it out with making it work if I couldn't? It's just not going to happen, okay? Now, we're walking down. They're introducing friends of friends. We're just piling up. A couple guys went somewhere else. They didn't want to go into RAOs. We were going to meet back with them because they had to wait for other friends also to come. You know, there was a lot of people a lot of guys went in 04. A lot of guys in the Gambino family. I think you know what? And the Bananas as well, because Vinny was straightening out a lot of guys when he got the acting boss position in a short time. Because they're by 06. I know he was pinched and convicted on another crime, but in 04, when they made him acting boss, he started sending all his guys in as well. And there was a lot of introductions with them as well. And, I mean, when I tell you that night, it's probably, we had a lot of guys the night when Mikey got straightened out that came by to sit, to be introduced as a friend. He was a working guy, wise guy. He would go to work every day. They had junkyards and everything. So he was never around like that. So they had to pick a night, ask him to come out so they could be introduced as friends. Now, I'll tell you one before that. Bobby Glasses, who winds up becoming the boss of the Gambino family, which will be, I'll do episodes on that because I don't think I put it in my book when the sit-downs and all the times I've been around Bobby. Bobby was from Ridgewood. Did we have a relationship? Street relationship. Did I like what he did? No. Did I like what he was convicted of? No. Support what he stand for? No. But by this time, when I met Bobby, he was older, retired, didn't have anything going on, really. One of the stories was going to be I was upside down for like $60,000 with a bookmaker of his. It was actually, his driver, so it was his bookmaking operation. That he wound up ruling in my favor anyway because the kid just didn't even know what he was talking about in sports. So, I'll do that story one day. So we go down to Ridgewood. It's like 4 or 5 o'clock, so it's not really dinner time. It's like lunch, dinner. And we congratulate Bobby on getting straightened out. He wasn't even straightened out yet. In the 90s, he gets straightened out, by the way. Jesus, for you people think that you know what he's talking about. He was never straightened out. He got straightened out in the 90s. One of the last guys to go in from that era. He was already an old-timer in the 90s. So he went up to his club. We walked off to the side. Gets introduced as a friend. Because at the time, my friend's father was a captain. And my friend was actually made before him. So they introduced by their captain, and he rose really fast. The captain, the panel. I think he actually went from right to panel. Maybe elevated right to captain. I forget how fast it went. It was so fast because he was the boss in no time. So I actually interrupted because they were doing it right out in the open. I figured they were going to whisper it. We were walking around the corner. I actually interrupted it, and I congratulated him. Right? I knew him as a person. He knew me, and that's what we were there for. So he didn't take it as anything because he was that type of guy. And I heard the whole thing, getting introduced. Because my friend was made, but he wasn't a captain, so he wasn't at the ceremony, but his father was. So he introduced his son to Bobby as a friend. And I was sitting right there when he said it. And believe me, my mentor was no whisperer. So, these guys, they talk about things and they have no idea what is really going on in Cosa Nostra because everything's changed. Now, am I saying that it's right that I was there or they should obey the rules? No, but they changed. So modern day stuff is modern day stuff. You can't bring it back and say that you were getting straightened out like it was the 1920s. And you're a clown if you got straightened out after 2010 anyway. It's a mockery. Guys were turning it down in the 90s and living, which if you turned it down, you got clipped. You got to turn that thing down after 2010. All it is a trip to the can after 2010. These guys that accepted buttons after that, it's a mockery. It's a joke. So that's another thing. I was there, and we went for a little bit of lunch in Ridgewood, a little restaurant, Italian restaurant on Myrtle Avenue. And, little appetizers, congratulations. He wasn't for it. Liked his espresso, his coffee, all the drank very heavy on caffeine. And that was it. He wanted to go. He wasn't really into that. That wasn't his thing. And I was there for that. And he eventually rose to boss. So you listen to these guys' stories, and believe me, there's surveillance photos of this stuff. It's out there. Because I promise you, I wouldn't be sitting here telling you these stories today. I'd still be in the life if they thought that I was the clown that everybody wants to keep claiming. So with that, the same thing's going on. We're going up to the Bronx, we're going to meet some Gambino guys. We actually met a few Bonanno guys, got introduced, a few introductions. And, we wind up going, Al that I was with, he wanted to go to RAO's. And I didn't know the whole time that we were with the guy that owned the joint's cousin. He wound up passing away, the kid got rest. He was a nice guy. He was involved in life a little bit. I don't think he should have been, but he was a nice kid and all. But it was funny because we're inside RAO's now, and, it's asked because you guys, it was a lot of us. It's crazy that we even did it the way we did it. The bartender that was there, I think, like 50 years. Wound up retiring, I think, after like 45 years or something. But this was back in 04. So, we're at the bar. It's a small bar. And then there's a famous private detective everybody knows. His table's right there. Round table in the way, actually, towards the sides of the bar. Which is actually, you really can't stand it. So we're in front of the bar. And there's like 2 tables. And then there's booths on the side. But there's too many. So, I guess that's why a lot of people bowed out to go somewhere else. They just didn't want to make the place too crowded. It's very small. And, but the guy I was with wanted to go to RAO's. So we were going. So our crew was in there. And we just happened to have this kid with us. And now I'm not familiar with The Sopranos at all. Or I'm not watching Mom. I'm like full blown against. And this has nothing to do with the life. This is something I told you. I always say, that besides The Godfather, and then watching a few other things because there was people from our neighborhood supposedly spoken about, talked about. But like any of these other real gangster movies, I really didn't watch until I decided to change my life. Besides like The Godfather, things that you watch for cinema reasons. And I didn't really watch The Sopranos, but they showed me that this guy was an actor on The Sopranos, and he played an FBI agent. But they never told me he was the owner yet. I had no idea, right? So he walks around, I don't know if he's ever watched one of the Rockies where Rocky would come, hang up his coat, put a sport jacket on, and go around in the restaurant and start greeting people. Well, that's exactly, I guess maybe that's where they got it from, because he said that's what he did for years. He would go, put on the same blue blazer, and walk around the restaurant singing, greeting people, but it was a small joint. So he comes over to say hello, greet, and I'm like, you gotta get this fucking FBI agent the fuck away from you. Are you fucking kidding? This guy plays a fucking cop. Then they all start laughing, my friends, my so-called friends, and the kid I'm actually getting acquainted with, we're kind of hanging out drinking. And he grabs me and goes, no, he goes, that's my cousin, he's the owner. It really was his mother's cousin. So, because he was around my age. And the guy's a lot older. He passed away now. One great guy, by the way. And I stopped, and he was singing, he greets everybody, he says hello. He has a drink with me and his cousin actually at the end of the table because he already knew my friends, and he was talking to his family member who I was with. And we wind up talking, wound up being a really nice guy. Told me that the recipes I had, because I wanted to know where to buy. Listen, there's one thing that everybody does go there because they're famous. The place is famous. But he does make a great sauce because we had meatballs that night. They would bring them to the bar. They were drinking. Once they start drinking, they don't like to eat. But he was bringing us out, a couple plates, and we had the meatballs. They were really good, but it was the sauce. The sauce was really good. So I was asking him at the bar. I was like, usually it's women that are cooks, not men. He goes, you're right. He goes, it was my aunt's recipes. These are all my aunt's recipes. And that's when I found out in 2004 that the guy that owns RAO's became popular because of certain people going to eat in there, and the only place left in Harlem, in that part of Harlem, well, yeah, in old Harlem, until they built it back up again. And they were originally his aunt's recipes from the old country. And that's what he used. I guess to today, I know they got a lot of RAO's products and everything like that. And he already, and there was one thing I found out afterwards is that he sold off the rights to all of that before he died. So I'm glad that his family is able to, because you know how that all gets tied up in court and everything else. But he sold off all of that. RAO sauce, RAO's macaroni, all that stuff. He sold that whole conglomerate together before he had passed away. So, you know, good for him. They still got the recipes there to this day. And that's when I met the owner of RAO's. And this was part one. And it was his aunt's recipes. That the food they eat in there today is the owner of RAO's and his cousin, who I was with that night, was his mother's cousin, was the owner of RAO's. Was a really good kid. Rest in peace. That was the last time I seen him. And he was just that night we spent together. And this was my first introduction to RAO's inside, tasting his sauce, drinking, meeting the owner, finding out the story. Because I'm like intuitive. I like to know things and how it's done and why do people keep coming back to the place. Because even if the place is famous and popular, people are eventually going to stop coming if the food sucks. Like Salt Bay. I mean, when they opened up in Times Square, I don't know, they must have changed it. The meat was like terrible. I don't know. When I came home, I went to eat there. The steaks was terrible. And I'm a big, Peter Luger fan. I'm always shout Peter Luger's greatest steak ever. I mean, it could be better steaks. I've been having this argument with a guy that's in the food industry, in the food business, and not the argument, but places that have better steak. Peter Luger's will always be mine. But, like I said, it's got to have something. Their service is terrible at Peter Luger's. The staff treats you like shit. It's funny as shit, but people go there because of the steak. So eventually, if the place would have just died out because of the food, they had to get better food at Salt Bay. I know that because the steak was rough and tough. I don't know how they're still open, so they had to get better meat. So this was the same thing. And come to find out, the recipes are good. The sauce is original. Recipes from the old country, from his aunt. So not only is it popular because of the people that eat there, own the tables. There's not people that eat there. Because this night, they actually brought another table over because everybody had their table that night. So, no matter who you are, if they don't have a table available for you, you can't eat there. That's why people get denied. People don't understand. They're not denying you because you're not nobody. The person that went in there that night with two powerful people, they had to bring a table and 3 chairs for them to sit at because everybody that owned the table in there had their table out that night. So it's not, the guys can't do anything about it if you're the biggest movie star in the world. He can't put you nowhere. There's people that own those tables, and that's it. The tables are all sold. So unless you know somebody that owns a table there and that will give it out to you to eat on a Monday or a Tuesday, I'm sure they're pretty low closed on Mondays because that was the rule. I know they were closed on Mondays, that you could go eat there. Other than that, when people say, I ate it, right? No, listen, that's somebody's table. You had a friend of a friend. It's not a big deal. Okay? When you can't get into a place that's that popular and the tables are just given out to people before you because you don't know anybody, that's different. These tables already belong to people's families, and they keep them. If you know a person that has that table and that using it, like I said, on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, you could go to RAO's and eat with a couple of your friends. I mean, the one guy's table was pretty big. I'm not going to mention his name. He's a private detective. He had a pretty big table. The booth's tight for maybe 4 uncomfortably, 3 comfortably on the floor tables. But that's RAO's. And this is part 1. Just keep listening. You're going to keep getting the right stuff from me. You keep listening to these other guys, I don't tell you who to subscribe to and who not. They're giving you shit from that you've heard already. When made guys were made guys. It ain't like that anymore. And it ain't been like that since the 90s. It ain't been like that. I'll give it the early 2000s because some serious dudes got made. That should have got made in the 90s. It just got pushed into the early 2000s. But for now, that's part 1 of the RAO's and Vinnie Gorgeous meeting story. See you next time.